Cold, 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 cold. So it was suggested to me when I made those cookies and ice cream sandwiches that I should have used homemade ice cream as well. And I'm not opposed to homemade ice cream. In fact, I love it. Cold stuff, as they call it in Pennsylvania Dutch. But the problem is homemade ice cream is an advanced cooking technique, and it requires specialized equipment. So instead, we're going to tackle it here.
Today's episode is brought to you by
The Court Shoe. With its sticky rubber and its thin grooves, it makes an ideal shoe for high traction situations. Additionally, the patent leather and stiff heel counter will take it many miles when you're running around the court. Recently, I've been displeased with our running shoe market for an everyday shoe, so I thought I'd try a court shoe. Don't do it! Despite the fact that it has all these pluses to it, it lacks cushioning in the midsole, which means that you get your feet beaten up over time. I tried to remedy this with an over-the-counter orthotic inside, still wasn't enough. So, for an everyday shoe, stick to a running shoe. For this recipe, you'll need 2 cups of whipping cream, a cup of half and half, a cup of whole milk, 3 egg yolks, 126 grams of hot chocolate mix, or if you have it in this format, 4.5 packages, and half a cup of plain old granulated sugar. All right, the first thing you're going to do after you've got your mise en place done, that's French for put in place, or making sure all your ingredients are measured out properly, is take your whipping cream and return it to the fridge. We want to make sure that this is as cold as possible, so that the trip from cold to frozen is as quick as possible. I talked about that a little bit when I did the frozen vegetables bit. We want to make sure that we create small ice crystals. That way we're going to have a much better mouthfeel in the end. Next, we're going to be doing a double boiler method a little bit later. So the bowl that you're going to use to start with, make sure that it is heat safe, preferably made of metal or perhaps glass are your 2 best choices. And I'm putting this on a hot pad because it's going to come off the stove a little bit later, and this is a good thing to have here. It's also going to keep it in place for my next step. That is, take my 3 egg yolks and my half a cup of sugar, a whisk, unhinge your shoulder and your elbow from their joints, and get to it. We are looking here to get our yolks and our sugar fully integrated so that we get a pale yellow color and so that the sugar is less granular in its feel. There. Now set that aside. We're going to take a medium pot and add to that our hot chocolate mix and our milk and our half and half mixture. That's going to go over medium heat, and we're going to bring that just to a simmer. We don't want to make it boil. It's going to boil over. It's going to make a mess for us. But a simmer where it's just bubbling around the edges there is going to allow us to then use that to bring up the temperature of our egg mixture. We're going to add that in just a little bit at first, and we're going to whisk away while we do that so that we can bring the temperature of each closer together. That way we're not going to scramble our eggs, and we can get the consistency closer to what we want to start with. Once you've got that well mixed in, then dump the rest of your hot chocolate mix in and whisk away to fully combine. Now I can finally set aside my whisk and instead pull out a wooden spoon, because we're going to switch to a double boiler method here. So I need to take, again, a medium-sized pot and fill it with about 5 centimeters of water. My bowl that now has my egg and hot chocolate mixture in it is going to go over top of that over medium heat, and we're going to let that sort of bubble away, and the steam from that is going to take, and it's actually going to cook our mixture very, very slowly. because if we end up with scrambled eggs, no bueno. So we want that to just come to the part where it's going to thicken for us. And what we're looking for is nappe. Again, we've gone back to the French. And this is when we can coat the back of the spoon with our mixture. And you can see here, when I draw my finger through it, that I get this nice, clear, defined line. That's nappe. Finally, take your whipping cream out of the fridge, and you're going to combine that with our egg hot chocolate nappe mixture, and make sure it's fully combined with a whisk. If you want to be really precise, we can take a chinois, which is a very, very fine meshed strainer, and we can send it through there before we send it to chill. That way, if you've got any extra lumps and bumps, they'll be removed first. But that's an extra step. It's optional. Chill that overnight so that you can get it nice and cold. Preferably, we're trying to get down to 4 degrees Celsius. Give it at least 4 hours in the fridge to make it fully chilled. I love the smell of churning ice cream in the morning. Set up your ice cream machine according to your manufacturer's instructions. Mine hooks up to my stand mixer here. And then turn it on. Make sure it's going at its lowest setting. Your ice cream batter is now sufficiently chilled in the refrigerator, so you're going to take that out and give it a final whisk. Then carefully dump it in. You're going to let that go for probably somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes. Don't over churn your ice cream. That's butter, and it tastes dry and gross. So we're going to check periodically to make sure that we're not over churning. Near to the end, you should see that your ice cream has increased in volume and that there's noticeable texture to it. This is called overrun. Overrun is when we're purposefully adding air to the ice cream, kind of like whipped cream. You won't get as much air into it as they do commercially, but that might not be a bad thing necessarily. When your ice cream is done, it's going to look something like this. While we're at it, why don't we try a dairy-free ice cream as well? Now, the world of dairy-free ice cream is weird and wacky, but I've been at it for a while because my wife requires dairy-free. So try this. We're going to take 800 milliliters of coconut cream, not coconut milk, coconut cream. You'll find this at your local Asian grocer or on that World Wide Web thing. You can see it's nice and thick there. We're going to add to that 1.25 cups of honey. Make it a mild honey. If you get too strong of a honey, it's going to taint the flavor there. Or you could use agave nectar. Honey is just what I have in the house right now. Also, we're going to need 6 tablespoons of Dutch processed premium cocoa powder and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Finally, just to enhance the flavor a little bit, just a pinch of salt, please. Whisk those all together. We're going to do one more thing before we go and take this to our ice cream churn. I'm going to give it a whisk first, and then I'm going to add to that 1/4 teaspoon of xanthan gum. Xanthan gum is going to do a couple of things for us here. It's going to make it a smooth texture for us so it tastes more like cream, as well as it's going to help prevent melting, because a lot of homemade ice creams melt really quickly. Now, xanthan gum doesn't want to combine so well with cold ingredients, so I'm going to take my 1/4 teaspoon and put it through a sieve here. And I'm going to whisk as I gently shake my sieve so that I can get it nice and fine and combined into my ice cream and not sitting around as clumps. Now I'm ready to take this to my churn and go for the same kind of doneness that I did with my regular ice cream. For either your ice cream or your dairy-free option, you're going to want to take and scrape it out into a container using a spatula. Avoid the very edge because that's likely overchurned. That container needs to be freezer safe because you're going to throw it in and freeze it for another 4 hours or so to let it harden up. Once you've done that, you can devour, or you can take your favorite crispy cookie. What? Yes, these are commercially made, but they're arrowroots and they're delicious. Then scoop some out onto your arrowroots and make yourself some sandwiches. Put those into a container and let them freeze for another 48 hours or so. That way the ice cream, the moisture from it, will go into the cookies and soften them up so you can take a perfect bite. You can't waste any of this good stuff.